The Cyclist Who Went Out in the Cold, written and read by Tim Moore. Chapter 1. To the North. You understand how it is here, the weather? The elderly Norwegian in a Charlie Brown ear-flap hat was the first pedestrian I'd encountered since leaving Kirkenes, a little port hunkered pluckily up in Europe's furthest top-right corner. On his third and loudest attempt, he had at last penetrated a howling blizzard and the many thermal layers that swaddled my head. It was a disappointing response to my own snood-muffled inquiry. The distance to Natamo, across the border in Finland, the European Union's northernmost settlement, and the only place for hours around that offered an overnight alternative to a hunched and lonely death in the subpolar darkness. My understanding of how it was there, the weather, had, I felt, been pretty solid for a graduate from the no-shit Sherlock School of Climate Studies. Our conversation was taking place 400 kilometres above the Arctic Circle, in winter. Nonetheless, this knowledge base had broadened memorably over the previous 18 hours, and in ways that left the tiny exposed parts of my face encrusted with frozen tears of pain and terror. I nodded feebly, expending around 8% of my physical reserves. "So why you are with bicycle?" The road to forsaken hypothermia had begun in cruelly different circumstances. The August before, I was outside a cafe in Florence, winding down after another day at the coalface of offbeat travel writing. In this instance, failing to catch a giant catfish beneath the city centre bridge, under the watchful gaze of 100 loudly critical onlookers. My phone rang. It was the Guardian's Germany correspondent, who had my contact details from a commission related to a distant misadventure that had left said coalface deeply imprinted with my own screaming death mask. "Hello," I said. "Please tell me this has absolutely nothing to do with the Eurovision Song Contest." Having reassured me, he requested my opinion on something I'd never heard of, rather than simply wished I hadn't. Our conversation was correspondingly brief, just long enough for my interviewer to imagine a story headlined, "Part-time cyclist knows nothing of new Iron Curtain bike trail." I set off home the next day, having for this trip exchanged my usual budget airliner for the four-wheeled fruit of a cheapskate's midlife crisis, a two-door 18-year-old BMW, recently acquired as it bumped noisily along the bottom of its depreciation curve. It was a ruminative drive, partly because of my dilatory chosen route, and partly because the radiator hose blew off whenever I put my foot down. Across northern Italy, I found myself on big winding chunks of the roads I had cycled 2 years earlier, when I had retraced the 1914 Giro d'Italia on a 99-year-old bike with wooden wheels. Crossing into France, I sought out alpine climbs remembered more fuzzily from my ride around the 2000 Tour de France route. And all the while, my thoughts were snagged by the idea of tackling this Iron Curtain trail. What a deliciously cool and breezy antidote such a ride would be to my current wilting South European summer, periodically enhanced as it was by an anti-freeze steam facial whenever I raised the bonnet in a lay-by. Then there were nostalgic memories of a 3-month journey my wife and I had made in 1990, driving across Scandinavia and a great swathe of the Eastern Bloc just weeks after the Berlin Wall came down. This over-ambitious, under-budget epic had, I now realised, set the template for my subsequent travels. We survived on stolen bacon and took turns at the wheel of, a two-door 18-year-old Saab. Reflecting on that trip, my mind's eye offered up repeated images of yawning flatlands viewed through a grubby windscreen. The prospect of freewheeling along such gloriously prone landscapes held immense appeal to a man gazing through another grubby windscreen at some of our continent's most merciless inclines, ones he had ridden up when he was either slightly too old to be doing so, or much too old. Then again, he was now 2 years older than much too old, and 6,700 kilometres, the Iron Curtain Trail's total distance as gleaned by the Guardian man from the press release in front of him, was twice as far as he had ever previously managed in one go. I came home with a new obsession, along with the facility to ask for 5 litres of demineralised water in a selection of continental languages. As a child of the Cold War, in fact for many years a proper grown-up, I still couldn't get my head round the fact that one could now traipse gaily hither and thither across the death strip. How unthinkable that would have seemed to my younger self. At the age of 12, I'd acquired a wooden-clad, Russian-built shortwave radio and spent long hours twiddling through eerie interval signals, broadcast.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?